Hello, everyone. How are you today? Oh, okay. Okay, if you came up here and stood on a stage and you asked everybody, how are you doing today? And they're like, oh, well. Okay, I'm going to ask again. How is everybody doing today? All right, that's a little bit better. That gives me a little more. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here to talk about moving from awareness to action. So I want to first talk about inclusion. I have a question to ask. This is gonna be participatory because I don't want to just be up here by myself talking to you all. Has anybody ever wanted to go somewhere and couldn't get in? How did it make you feel? Yeah, bad? Anything else? Any other feelings? No? So when I think about inclusion, this is the thing I think about. If you have ever wanted to get in somewhere and you couldn't get in, or you wanted to do something and you couldn't, you were not included, right? You were excluded and you were left out. Everybody has their own different definition of inclusion, but I don't really have one defining definition, but I would say if you have ever been left out of something, you know what it means to not be included in something. And accessibility. Who in the room is familiar with accessibility? A lot of you. Good, good. All right, so I want to first talk about web accessibility. Web accessibility means that websites, tools, and technologies are designed and developed so that people with disabilities can use them. More specifically, people can perceive, understand, navigate, and interact with the web. So there's 4 principles with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines that spell out POUR, P-O-U-R, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Who's familiar with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines? Same people, right? Good. You all, if you're not familiar, should get familiar because it's important. Tim Berners-Lee says, the power of the web is in its universality. Access by everyone, regardless of disability, is an essential aspect. So has anyone seen before A11Y? Yeah. So for those who don't know, A11Y is the numeronym for accessibility. So if you're interested in learning more, you can look up the hashtag A11Y, and that'll give you a lot of information on that. So there's a difference between accessibility and inclusion. Inclusion is like the umbrella, and accessibility falls under that. Accessible design focuses on the outcome or end result of a design project. Inclusive design is closely related to accessibility, but rather than an outcome, it's a methodology for how to approach design. It's a process for creating a design that can be used by a diverse group of people. So 1 in 4 people in the United States have a disability. Since the pandemic, it's higher than this, in my opinion, because so many people, I mean, who's okay in here? Is everybody okay? Nobody is, right? Beyond what's gone on with COVID, many people have had deep impacts from the pandemic happen in their life, and one of those things is depression, which falls under disability as well. So I think the number is much higher than 1 in 4 at this moment. I'm not sure of the statistics in other countries, but in the US, it's definitely higher. So a question, are you incorporating inclusion and accessibility into your organizational culture? Any folks doing it? Yeah, I see some head nods, great. So these companies have a culture of accessibility. So this means that they think about including people with disabilities whenever they make something, not just when the thing is already finished, which oftentimes happens. Oftentimes accessibility is an afterthought. So it also means they focus on people who use their technology. So BBC is great. They have so many amazing resources, Blackboard, Capital One, Dropbox, and Drupal. So there are 5 key elements of accessibility culture. First is standards. Companies follow guidelines set for accessibility. So if your company doesn't have any standards, then what are you doing, right? There isn't really a culture set up for accessibility. Second is education. How many people in the room have done any sort of accessibility training in the workplace? Okay, there's not a lot of people raising their hands right now, which tells me that there is a lack for education, which will train employees on accessibility for their specific roles, because depending on what you do, you'll do different things. Accountability, so teams are responsible for creating accessible content. Fourth is inclusive, so hiring and working with people with disabilities. And fifth, it's everyone's job. I've worked in many companies, I've consulted in different companies, and a lot of times people say, well, that's Dev's problem, that's not ours. But that's not true. It's truly everyone's job. Accessibility and inclusion is a part of everyone's job. So again, the 5 key elements of accessibility culture are standards, education, accountability, inclusive, and it's everyone's job. Which social media platforms do you all use? Can just talk to me. What do you use? What do you use? Twitter? Instagram? Reddit? Yeah? Cool. Well, thanks. I just have a list here of the top 10 social media platforms in the world. On this page, I also have the icons of each of these. So Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, TikTok, QQ, Douyin, Telegram, and Sina Weibo. So one of the things I wanted to present about accessibility, because so many people use social media, I wanted to kind of talk about accessibility in that. So in 2008, 10% of Americans use social media. Do y'all remember what phone you had in 2008? Anybody? Anybody remember their Nokias and other phones, right, that they had? So in 2021, 82% of Americans use social media. So that's a huge difference, right? Can you believe it? Do people remember 2008 when you didn't even have a touch screen? You know what I'm talking about? And it took you a really long time to text people. So we've seen quite the leap in folks using social media. So I wanted to share this example. How many people in the room are familiar with a screen reader? Quite a few of you. So for those who are not familiar with a screen reader is an assistive technology that folks who are blind or low vision use. Here on the screen, I have a tweet from Kent C. Dodds. The tweet says, "You think it's cute to write your tweets and usernames this way, but have you listened to what it sounds like with assistive technologies like VoiceOver?" Has anybody? Well, you're about to right now. So let me go to Twitter. Hopefully this will play for everybody.
Serif italic small t, mathematical sans serif italic small h, mathematical sans serif italic small 1, mathematical sans serif italic small n, mathematical sans serif italic small k, it's, mathematical script small c, mathematical script small u, mathematical script small t, e2, mathematical sans serif fold small d, mathematical sans serif fold small r, mathematical sans serif fold small 1, mathematical sans serif fold small t, mathematical sans serif fold small a, your tweets and usernames, mathematical bold fractor small t, mathematical bold fractor small h, mathematical bold fractor small 1, mathematical bold fractor small s, mathematical bold fractor small d, mathematical bold fractor small a, mathematical bold fractor small y. But have you, mathematical sans serif fold italic small l, mathematical sans serif fold italic small 1, mathematical sans serif fold italic small s, mathematical sans serif fold italic small t, mathematical sans serif fold italic small a, mathematical sans serif fold italic small n, mathematical sans serif fold italic small a, mathematical sans serif fold italic small d, 2 what it, mathematical sans serif italic small s, mathematical sans serif italic small o, mathematical sans serif italic small u, mathematical sans serif italic small n, mathematical sans serif italic small d, mathematical sans serif italic small s, mathematical sans serif italic small l, mathematical sans serif italic small 1, mathematical sans serif italic small k, mathematical sans serif italic small a. With assistive technologies like script capital letter, script letter, a script letter, is script letter, a script capital letter, a script letter, a script letter r, insertion on word, u, between characters, and you are currently on a text area.
Okay, so that was 2 sentences. Yeah, that was 2 sentences. So yeah, you think it's cute to write your tweets and usernames this way, but have you listened to what it sounds like with assistive technologies like VoiceOver? So Another thing I'd like to talk about is, any thoughts on that, by the way? I'm happy to talk after too, but I think it's very important for folks to know and realize the impact of the things that they put out there in the world. Another thing, here I have an image of a tweet from Accessibility Manitoba that says, when using multi-word hashtags, make sure they are in camel case. This means capitalizing the first letter of each word, e.g. accessible hashtags. This ensures that they are more legible for screen readers. Otherwise, it reads it just like a whole name if you don't use the camel case. So camel case is also important for those with dyslexia, those in the blind and low vision communities, and in general, it's just easier to read. Another thing is including images, image descriptions / alternative text. This is from the New York Times. There are 3 boxes on the screen. The first box says hot pink puffy coat. The next box says back of a person's head with long dark hair. And the next box says penguins diving through a school of fish. So surrounding this paragraph are empty boxes overlaid with a short line of text. It's always important to add alternative text. You don't know if somebody's in an area where they don't have good internet service or if they're using assistive technologies. In captions, Merrill Evans, accessibility advocate, says, adding captions is only half the battle. The other half is quality. The same goes for transcriptions. Not only do you want them to be accurate, but also well-informed. So here I have a little image of transcription versus captioning. So there is a difference between transcription and captions. Transcription refers to the process by which audio is converted into written text, whereas captioning divides the transcript into time-coded chunks known as caption frames. Though transcription forms the basis of captioning, each process has respective use cases. So another thing to think about is avoiding ableist language. Ableism is a big problem throughout our society. It's part of the reason why many things are not made with folks with disabilities in mind. Ableism is not a list of bad words. Language is one tool of an oppressive system. Being aware of language, for those of us who have the privilege of being able to change our language, can help us understand how pervasive ableism is. Ableism is systematic, institutional, devaluing of bodies and minds deemed deviant, abnormal, defective, subhuman, less than. Ableism is violence. This is from Lydia X.Z. Brown. Another thing to avoid is sharing inspiration porn. This oftentimes happens with the disability community where things are shared and it's like, look at this amazing thing. For those who are not aware, inspiration porn is portraying disabled people as inspirational solely because of their disability. There are 3 basic questions to ask before sharing a story about a disabled person. The first is, did the disabled person tell their own story, or was it told by others? 2, who was the video, image, or article targeted to? And 3, is the thesis of the video, image, or article saying, if they can overcome it, why can't you? Inspiration porn objectifies and dehumanizes disabled people. So some common accessibility issues. Every year, webaim.org does, they survey 1 million websites. Is anybody familiar with the WebAIM million in this room? No? Awesome. Go to webaim.org and check them out. They have a survey each year where they look at the web content accessibility guidelines versus what's out there in the world. And these are some of the big things that they found. Lack of section headings, so consider using H2 through H6 elements to add identifying headings to all sections. Poor color contrast, this is like the #1 issue on the web still. 86.4% of home pages had low contrast text, which means that that's very difficult for folks with low vision to see, and oftentimes other folks. So this was averaging 31 instances per homepage. So inability to navigate using keyboard only. So avoid outline : 0 or outline : none, or other styles that remove or limit visibility of keyboard focus indicators. Missing text equivalents for images: 26% of images had missing alternative text. So over 1/3 of all images analyzed had detectable accessibility issues with them. And videos lacking captioning. It'd be like me being here on the stage. So if you're deaf and you can't hear the video, right, that's what happens. So adding those captions is super helpful for people. So some common accessibility issues include lack of section headings, poor color contrast, inability to navigate using keyboard only, inability to operate functionality using keyboard only, missing text equivalents, inability to resize text, and videos lacking captioning. So one thing you can all do is commit to making things more accessible by creating a policy for it. Many of you had said you haven't had training, right? So go and talk to folks you work with and say, hey, I want to learn more about accessibility. Is it possible for me to get some training on it and find out more? Things to consider when you're creating experiences is, what is this like without visuals, without sound, if someone is one-handed, if someone has no hands, if someone's seated or standing, or just using voice or a switch controller. So what we can focus on is color usage, having a good content strategy, heading structures, link behaviors, thinking about how we're linking things throughout, our hover and focus states, for forms, errors, labels, etc., for our layout, being consistent with responsiveness, thinking about what we're doing with our media. Are we providing captions? Are we providing alternative text? Tab order and bypass blocks, timing, and typography. So I have a short video I want to show you because I've shown it before and it's very powerful, I think. And I think that you'll get a little something out of it. It'll give you some food for thought.
A shop called What's in Store is open for business. Security cameras show that nearly all the products on the shelves are blank and have no information on them. A woman walks into the store. She looks at the blank products and is very confused.
Is there anything you're particularly looking for?
An explanation?
One by one, more customers enter, each as confused as the last.
What's all this unmarked stuff?
Oh, it's just regular food.
What's the deal?
How can you tell what's what?
They don't even have signs.
A woman points to some tins.
Is this a different item to that?
Not necessarily, no.
This is crazy. Are you sure this isn't some kind of massive joke?
So you don't know what it is?
No, I don't.
No, you know, obviously, but how do we know?
No,
what
I
it is?
don't know either.
A title reads, "Everyone should have the right to know what they're buying." Yet 9 in 10 blind and partially sighted people find it difficult to access crucial information on packaging.
There's no nutrition value, there's no fat, there's no salt, there's no sugar written on the labels. What do you know what you're getting?
What if you have a nut allergy?
Good question.
My mind is working overtime right now trying to figure this stuff out.
So just imagine if this was your regular shopping experience, like if you went to... This is the regular shopping experience for somebody who's partially sighted or blind.
Right, I see.
Quotes from people with sight loss read, "I have to depend on others to read it for me. It's denying us our independence. I want manufacturers to take notice." A title reads, "We're working with brands and supermarkets to make their packaging more accessible. But there's still more work to do." Find out how you can help at rnib.org.uk. RNIB.
So I only have about 20 seconds left, but I'm sure you all have lots of thoughts. So how do we move from awareness to action? This is something we all need to ask ourselves individually, right? We all have our jobs to do, we all have bosses, we all have projects, we all have things. I want everyone to think about this. Each and every single one of us will experience disability at some point in our lives. We all will. And it is important that we start now making things accessible, not just for everybody, but for ourselves. It really is. So the question to ask is, how can I do this? How can I get more involved? How can I get my organization to start to look at accessibility? Are the things that we're doing accessible or not? Do we need trainings? Apparently, a lot of y'all do, because a lot of y'all didn't raise your hands when I said, have you had a training? So these are things to think about. So another thing, here I have an image of folks from different cultures, and nothing about us without us is oftentimes used in the disability community. So if you're not hiring or involving folks with disabilities in your process, you need to. If you're not having folks of different cultures involved in the process, you need to get them. Nothing about us without us. And I'll leave you with this quote from futurist Alvin Toffler: "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." Thank you.